Welcome to the Comedy Den podcast, your backstage pass to the business of funny. I'm Jared Monroe, and today we are interviewing my good friend, comedian Dave Landau. You know Dave from his show Normal World on Blaze TV, his many appearances on Gutfeld, his recent appearances Joe Rogan Experience and Kill Tony. Today we're going to get into his origin of comedy and how he got started in the business. We're going to talk about what makes the Austin comedy scene so special. We're going to talk about how Dave approaches sketch writing and his insights into navigating the world of political comedy. Let's go.
I'm very excited. Who went before me?
Derek Stroop.
Okay.
And Mike Goodwin. So
okay.
We're off to a solid start here.
I've not met them, but I've seen Derek Stroop online, and he's very funny.
He's ridiculous. He's ridiculous. He's recording a special at the time of this recording, next weekend, and could not be more excited about that one. But
very cool.
You, on the other hand, though, you're coming off the heels of quite the run. At the time of this recording, 3 days ago, your Kill Tony episode just dropped. Yeah. You were on Rogan last week. I know you've opened for Shane Gillis in your hometown of Detroit.
Yeah.
What's this ride been like?
It's been good, actually. I mean, I've known Shane for years, and we used to be on a show together on Compound Media called A Fair One, which I ended up kind of taking over for him when he got canceled, and during that 2-year run. But it was great. I mean, it was 17,000 people. And the most I had done before that was 7,000 with Chappelle almost 20 years ago. So to see 17,000 in a hockey arena was absolutely bonkers. I mean, it was a blast. I mean, it was my hometown. So that was cool. That's
got to be incredible. Just doing it in that type of comedy in that venue. I don't think people appreciate like how much different that is than the club space, like from the It's this same joke, but the delivery. I mean, you're waiting for laughter to hit the wall and get back to you. It's just, what's that like?
It's amazing. It's explosive. I mean, you hit something hard, and especially like I did a few shots at Detroit and stuff that they would just get because I had to go first, which is, you kind of eat the bullet, but not there because Shane went up. Well, he was off to the side and he announced me and said, everybody has to be quiet or I'll come there and hurt you. And the whole place was silent. I mean, they're major comedy fans, and that's what was really cool about it. Was they really are there for comedy, and you could kind of do no wrong as long as you didn't suck. And it was a blast, dude. It was really a blast.
That is incredible. I can't say I miss Detroit too much. My experiences in the Detroit area are slim, but that's one of those ones you make the trip. You make the trip to Detroit for that one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Detroit's a great place to perform, and I think that's why he was there. A lot of people will go to Detroit just because of the history of it, because of the punk rock history, Motown history, all the band, everything that's like Detroit's always been a place that has been great for performers. So it's cool to be a part of any of that. And I've gotten to play like every venue there now, which is really exciting.
My main experience in the Detroit area is going to
Robbed.
Yeah, robbed. But going to this incredible Middle Eastern restaurant that was in like Ypsilanti area.
Okay.
Was phenomenal. The best Middle Eastern food I and and Steven had ever had. We would go there before we did the radio show, and we would pig out. It was awesome. It was the highlight of our trip going there. And then we just went there one other time, and it was obliterated. It was not there anymore. And it was kind of the lesson was the hole in the wall restaurants. You want to seek them out because they're great. And Detroit's a good food town.
It's a great food town.
But the hole in the wall restaurants, there's a fine line between restaurants that you don't want and restaurants that are incredible. And the difference is the ones that go under versus the ones that get shut down. There's a very distinct line in the sand of the ones and which ones are which, because I'm pretty sure they got caught funneling money to Hezbollah.
Yeah, they do get caught. I was going to say, if it was a Middle Eastern restaurant, there have been a few places that I like that you can no longer go to because they were funneling money to terrorist organizations. But
that's the best food. That's the one you want.
That's what I'm saying. They know what they're doing. I mean, clearly they have a lot of linkage to where they're from, so much so that you question what you eat there. But yeah, it's really amazing because there was a place right by us called Lashish, and that guy was funneling money to Hezbollah.
Who knew? But the hummus checks out. That's what matters.
It's all that cares.
My greatest professional regret is that we never got to work together back in the day. We just
Well,
two ships in the night, if you will.
yeah, we passed by, just sailed right past each other.
Just sailed right past. I think those would have been the best days.
We shared a chair in ways.
We did. We shared a chair, and but man, I really sincerely regret like seeing some of the work you were putting out and continue to put out. I'm like, man, if there was never an opportunity to collab with Dave on stuff, and that's why I was so happy and excited to do your show. Was that a year ago? I think it was a year ago I did your show.
Probably about a year ago,
yeah. And but been friends for a few years now, and just excited, man. I'm excited to see where your career is just taken off. Now, tell me about the Austin scene, because you've been more and more you've been at the Mothership really frequently. I see you there all the time. My good friend who does a lot of photography there is constantly posting pictures. I'm like, there's Dave. I'm like, yeah. Tell me about that scene, because when did you start getting plugged in there? And I've not gone to the Mothership yet, regrettably. So what's that comedy scene like in that space? Because it's got to be, I imagine, so different. It's kind of like LA comedy scene 2.0 in some regards, because a lot of those same people that kind of came out there. But what is that comedy scene like, and how is it different from the other places you've been, the New York scene, the LA scene? What makes the comedy scene in Austin special?
I think because it really is, there's kind of like it really is kind of like an artistic community where you see all different kinds of people performing. Like you hear a lot of hate and blowback for it. And that's basically because they aren't there and they don't understand what people are actually doing or how many people are actually invited to perform there. So it's a cool thing because you're kind of in with some of the biggest shows in the world. And at the same time, you're performing at a club that sells itself out. So it's constantly packed every time you go on stage. Both rooms are great for their own reasons. One room, which is the Little Boy, which is more of it's like a practice room, but it's absolutely incredible. And you just like bottom of the barrel is one of my favorite shows because you just improvise off of what the crowd suggests. And that I absolutely love because you can just come up with new material that way and kind of play with the audience. They're also there to see comedy, which is a nice thing because you feel like it's so many tourists. You feel like you're getting a little piece of everywhere every time you go on stage. And being a part of it has been really fun. Like I started going there about 2.5 years ago. I'm like, I'm just going to start driving to Austin and maybe I'll get on Rogan, and I just started going back and forth and just kept going and performing and having fun. So I probably go there at least every couple weeks to perform. And it's just, I just kind of set that goal for myself. And then eventually I got Rogan and Kill Tony a couple times. And I fortunately knew Shane and other people who are already obviously, connected in the industry that are huge there. But I've been around for a while and I've known Joe since I was on Kumia's show. Mm-hmm. So it was just a matter of going there and like getting in front of the right people, and having Adam E get past me the first time I went on stage, who was Norm Macdonald's co-host, meant a lot to me. So having that all
people don't know, Adam was like the gatekeeper of the Comedy Store for a long time. So he was the booker after Mitzi. And so, I mean, to get him to pass you, to recognize that had to feel special.
It did, yeah. And he's always been cool. He gave me a headline week after seeing me like 2 or 3 times. And I've now got to headline there a couple times for weekends, which is crazy good. And he couldn't take care of comics more. So the whole ride has been really fun. It's like I had to kind of restart, to be honest with you. I've had a lot of false starts to where I'm like, oh, I didn't make it. I have, but when you put it out there, like I've done very well for myself. But what I want to be is, I don't know, bigger, but more, just more out there. And I've not, everything changed so much in comedy from the time I started to now that I have to kind of navigate these new waters, even though it's some waters that people have always been in, if that makes sense. If you've only been in comedy for 6-7 years, you don't know anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Do you feel like in that room, in the Mothership, that your brand, your perspective is understood differently than some of the other cities? Like, obviously, it's no secret that you're a right leaning comic who, really punches down at woke culture and political correctness and incredibly pro free speech in the comedy, which most comedians obviously have a really strong pro free speech angle at their, as a value.
Yeah.
But do you feel like that particular room in Austin like gets your kind of comedy differently than some of the other major cities in the comedy world?
I think they do, especially with stand up, because a lot of my stuff was never really right leaning. Because I always say, like, I'm more of a centrist, but I mean, I'm nowhere near whatever the left has become. And I know
Yeah.
that's been regurgitated 1,000 times, but I've been saying it for 10 years that I didn't understand where it was going. But a lot of my stuff is like story based about my life. And it's more about what I really do love is the idea of storytelling, one liners, whatever you can do on stage, playing with the crowd. Every form of comedy is good. So the fact that they're familiar with all different styles, I feel a freedom there, especially because people have, insulted the locking down the phones thing, but it's actually
Yeah.
hugely beneficial to a performer because it allows you to actually connect with an audience in a way where they're not constantly checking their phone.
Yeah.
So it's a nice thing because it feels almost like you're doing comedy 15 years ago where they couldn't.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And that's pretty common practice. Like a lot of the main clubs we go to anymore, a lot of our clients are in and out of the, I forget what they call the brand that has the bag and everything, but the locking away the phones is a pretty common practice, which I feel like is a good shift for comedy, just to make comedy free again in that sense, and people for the comedians to feel like they're performing for that crowd, which is how it's always intended to be. Like, this is for this audience, and then when you do a special, it is for the whole audience. It's a whole for the worldwide audience. But I imagine in those rooms in particular, when you have people who want to express opinions and things that maybe aren't super popular, but they're dialed into that particular people and how they're responding, and your sensitivities are constantly feeding off that crowd of where they want to go and where they're willing to go and what they're willing to laugh at. Do you feel like that the material itself too just feels different when you know that is not, that you're not going to get canceled the next day because someone takes the joke completely out of context and throws it up on social?
Yes. There's a freedom in the room, especially if you're doing like, bottom of the barrel or something riffing where you don't mean what you're saying. You're just going
Yeah.
off what the audience says, which can so easily be taken out of context as if that's your real idea. But you
Yeah.
might be reading back just what somebody wrote as a suggestion. So there's a lot of room there. If somebody wanted to kind of try to get you in trouble, they could. And there's such a big difference between being in the room with a comic in that moment and feeling it out and knowing what the entire vibration of the room is, as opposed to looking at it through a screen and then deciding if you should be bothered by a joke. Or the whole thing is ridiculous. Like, if I'm talking into a microphone on stage, chances are I don't really mean what I say in some way or another. Not to say it's not authentic, but I'm joking.
Yeah, and I think like your particular brand of humor, which I've always appreciated. I mean, you are one of the quickest guys on your feet to just respond to anything. And I mean, I've seen you in not only in the comedy stages, but in the talk show formats on Gutfeld and all these other venues. And like, your quickness, I feel like there's an inherent risk of that too, because you are so fast. Your brain is moving faster almost than your mouth can you're not really have time to really process, like, how is this going to hit everybody in the whole wide world, 10 billion people out there. You're thinking like, this is going to land with this audience, and because you're quick and you're fast and you're dark. You're really dark.
Yeah. But no, that's true. Like, I do have like 80 thoughts coming out of my mouth at one time, especially if I'm on a talk show. So when something does just pop out, I'm like, I hope this makes the cut. And there's stuff that I've done on Gutfeld where I'm stunned that it made it to air.
Yeah.
But he's really good about that, because I don't think I've ever had anything cut off that show.
Yeah.
But there is a part of that where you are risking it, and especially in that improv medium, which I love, and it's just you on stage being able to mess around. You do have that. I mean, I had, this was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I was maybe 2 years ago. But I was doing a joke just about transgender swimmers, and my whole joke is if I were to compete as a woman, it would make no difference whatsoever. The whole joke is on me sucking at sports.
Yeah.
But this dude stands up with a phone out, and he's like, "This is the most transphobic show I've ever seen in my entire life." And I'm like, "How?" And we're near Seattle. And I go, "How?" I was making fun of myself. And I'm like, "Is anybody trans here?" And people clapped. And I go, "Are you offended by anything?" No, they weren't. And the guy like slowly puts away his phone and then runs out. He gets stopped by a bouncer who goes, "You still have to pay your check."
Yeah.
And the guy's like, And he's like, well, I would like to go back and sit down. Actually, I think I may have overreacted. And the bouncer goes, yeah, you're not allowed to come here ever again. That's not how it works. But this person had showed up to a random show of any comedian, phone ready, and just wanted to make a viral video taking someone down, and it backfired on him. So, I mean, if there's one, there's a million. And it didn't bother me because there's nothing. If you listen to my act, there's really just me punching myself.
Yeah.
Where I might take in some sort of, cultures and different topics that are fairly, I don't know, topical at the time, I guess. I hate to say topical topics, but there is that element to it where I don't try to attack anybody. And I really do just try to put it all on myself. So it's kind of not going to work unless you really want it to. Where in the talk show angle, you are kind of attacking stuff on purpose, where you have to make fun of whatever topics brought up. And yeah, that's sort of the job.
Yeah, I feel like that's where people will cut clips out of context as well as to put out that, because you're going to get a different form of Dave, or any comic in different venues too. So yeah, it's the differentiation between like who you're punching at, and they'll kind of like blur the lines between what the audience was for these different pieces of content and what the intention of it was. I think I've talked to people about this before too, like this idea of like a comedy IQ that I feel like people increasingly have a hard time understanding, like, what is the joke? Like, do you understand like who is being punched at in this joke? Because we're so sensitive to certain words, certain terms being thrown out. You're like, okay, if you say even the word transgender, you must be making fun of transgender people. Whereas your joke, I know because I'm familiar with that bit, is you are the butt of that joke, and people don't necessarily. Not everybody has. It's not even like a city, like a educated city comedy city thing versus a rural comedy. It's not the same spectrum of intelligence. It's like a comedy IQ is like something almost totally different, where people have a hard time, I think, and increasingly have a hard time understanding like who is the butt of this joke, and why is this joke even funny? Like it's example of that would be, I remember when this is a long time ago, there's like this called Vintage 21 or something like that, Jesus videos that came out, and it was early YouTube. These videos came out, I think it was a church that put them out, where they overdubbed these old Jesus films, and they made Jesus sound like this really sissy wimpy guy who was criticizing the disciples, and it was back in that day, it was really funny. I remember thinking like, this is just hilarious. They're still funny. And I remember a lot of Christians were offended at it, and they didn't understand the context of it. Was not that this is not a group making fun of Jesus. The whole angle of this was presented in a sermon series as kind of what too many Christians think Jesus was like. And that was the angle. It was the punching at people's wrong perceptions of Jesus. Jesus was not actually the joke. And so like, it's okay to laugh. It's okay to laugh at that. Like there's, can you separate what the joke is and who the butt of it is? And like, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
No, I do. I think you're right, because I think that's hilarious personally, because it's obviously something that if you laugh at it immediately without thinking, that's your humor. That's naturally who you are. If you have to go check yourself to see if you're a bad person after, you should. That's what comedy is. It kind of brings out the part of you maybe you don't want to look at, or maybe you shouldn't find something funny, but you find it funny. That's what's enjoyable about it. I've always enjoyed looking at somebody who's desperately trying not to laugh at something because they're questioning their own morality. And that to me I don't know, that's fulfilling, because you're even talking about something. If I'm talking about something that's involving my own life and they're relating it into a way that they don't even want to let out whatever part of them relates to that, that makes me feel good. And I think it makes them feel good too, because we're all, like even with the Jesus thing, we're all sinners. I mean, I've done my share of terrible things. I have a book about it, but I think that your voluntary reaction to something is normal, and it's unnatural to look at something and go, is it okay to laugh? And I've never seen it like it is today, where everybody kind of looks around a room before they can laugh. It's a bizarre feeling. And it's at Rogan's Club, it's definitely they naturally just laugh, but you can kind of hear them hold back a little. But that's anywhere now where people want to make sure. And whenever you hear a genuine laughter, where somebody's just dying laughing at the most inappropriate thing right away, that's somebody who's just in touch with who they are. They think it's funny. They know they're at a comedy club. And
Yeah.
I love those people. They're shameless. And that's what you should be when you go to a place like that. I don't go to a concert and look around to see if other people are enjoying the songs.
Yeah.
I'm there
Yeah.
because I'm enjoying it anyway. My world is just me and the performer. It's not me and what everybody else thinks about me. We're so concerned with what everybody else thinks about us now in a way that we never have been before, that it's actually hurting people's own identity. Or like you said, comedy IQ, you can't even figure out what a joke's about or who you are to laugh at it. Just laugh. Think about it later why you laughed, but stop punishing yourself because you find something that might be deemed inappropriate by other people funny. If you like it, there's a reason you like it.
Yeah, there's almost a relief that comes from the phones being locked up in these places so that they don't film me laughing at certain jokes that now I'm fired the next day for laughing at a joke that was deemed inappropriate. Yeah, you're trying to cancel audience members at this point. So your comedy career, you talked about the ups and downs, and I'm familiar with a lot of those, but not all of them for sure. Take me back to like early comedy day. Like where did this all start? When did you step into this, the space of stand-up comedy? How did you know you wanted to do this? I know you have, I've always appreciated your humor too, because I have a dark, sick sense of humor as well. And I know a lot of that for you comes from a lot of pain and stuff growing up as well. But I'm kind of curious like about that story. Like how did you get into this whole world?
Well, I've talked about it on different shows and everything, but for your audience, my dad got Agent Orange when I was 13. Well, he didn't get it then. He got a tumor from it. He got it in Vietnam. But he suffered for about 5 years, died when I was 18. And in that time, my family was kind of going out of the not out of the country, but out of the state to pay for medical procedures for brain surgery because the VA and insurance companies were so generous by giving us nothing. So I got into hard drugs and partying and that sort of thing. And the only thing that I really always liked was filmmaking and comedy. Those were the only two. And my dad told me about Second City, and a teacher also who I always was making huge problems in her class told me, like, you're actually funny, but stop doing it in here. Just there's a place called Second City. And I ended up going to Second City, and I loved it's a comedy theater where all the SNL people came out of in Chicago. At that time in Detroit, Keegan Michael Key was there. There's a bunch of people that ended up doing something out of it. But I went there in probably about 2001, took a class, dabbled in stand up, and then really got serious about it in 2003. And after that, I just started going there doing improv, stand up. Or after that, I started doing stand up because I was writing shows and everybody liked my writing and my sketches. So I started just performing stand up comedy and I clicked really quickly. Mark Ridley, who owns the Comedy Castle in Detroit, rep me for a long time. He got me I hit Comedy Central when I think I was like 24, like a little bit after I started, 23.
Mm-hmm.
I had like the HBO Comedy Festival. I hit stuff right out of the gate. And then, I learned more about the industry as the more you get, like things just dropped off. And it was very up and down for a long time. But I mean, the way that I got started was just by always appreciating comedy and just going for it.
When did you kind of feel like your voice started to develop in that world? I mean, because obviously, I first knew about you from the Kumia days of your work. Yeah. And so, I think as far as your voice in that world and kind of your perspective, like when did you feel like that started becoming kind of part of your brand and really kind of felt comfortable saying what you really thought, saying what putting out there your comedy from your perspective, your values, that kind of thing? Did that develop over time, or was that something that was always kind of there?
No, it developed over time. I mean, it was something there, but I would highly censor myself when I first started. And it wasn't just about being clean because I'm not necessarily filthy or anything or dirty, but I'm definitely not squeaky. Yeah. So when I started, I wanted to work. So I did a lot of really clean material. And I had opened for like Stephen Wright and some other people that were very, very kind of clean too. And I was very deadpan. I mean, I'm still kind of deadpan, but I was trying to get work. So I toured a bit with Henry Cho. I opened his special. He really liked me. So I was really trying to stay in that frame of, I should really do this. And it just never felt right to me because I felt like I wasn't being myself. I wasn't being who I wanted to be. And it wasn't that I wasn't proud of what I was doing, but I was clearly holding back. And I still think I hold back. But as I grew more and more, it's kind of like the Louis thing where you hit a point where you just go, I don't care. And you walk on stage and you're just
Yeah.
you. I'm sort of at that point now where I just don't care anymore. I've been in it for so long that I just want to be me. And I find that the more I've been honest about my life on stage, the more stories I've told, the more blunt I'm being, the more I just let it out, the more people will talk to me after and talk about relating. Or I've had a lot of people have sobered up because of a story I've told, which is really nice to hear when I get like an email about that, somebody who had hit rock bottom and watched my show. And so there's like an element of both to it where I do want to say things that are completely irreverent, but I do also want to share part of my story with the audience. That's really important to me. And I like the fact that I'm doing it now because I was kind of afraid to for a long time.
Yeah.
And I was still active in drinking until 2009. So it was, I wouldn't really have trashed it at that point. I wasn't really a guy who got drunk on stage or anything, but I really didn't shift into being sober and trying to find a new voice until I had clarity.
Yeah, I think there's this thing for young comics, and I feel like there's certainly this thing on the more the industry side of it, like we are in the comedy industry, where you're always kind of trying to be what you think people want you to be, and it's very scary to kind of just be yourself and put yourself out there. I mean, even today, for people to ask, like, okay, where did all this start out for us and my company and for my story? Like, it's recently that people are like, oh, Jared Monroe is Jared Monroe, and like there's a scary like world of kind of being like comfortable just being myself out there and being confident and saying this is what I think about things, this is how I do business, this is how and it's all authentically me, but it's that brand shift and like embracing your own voice is a scary journey for, I think, for a lot of comics, especially because they don't want to blow things up before they even get started.
No, and I don't want to say lucky, but I was able to get on the Artie Lang and Anthony Cumia show, like you said, and being able to have freedom to say anything you wanted, because chances are I wasn't going to say anything worse than Artie and Anthony every time.
Yeah, so that's true.
Yeah, and like my first job, like in podcasting or radio, that's like trial by fire. I'm with two legends.
Yeah, and you're the balanced, reasonable one.
Right, yeah, in the middle, yeah. And I learned very quickly how to react and make jokes and have fun with it. And I also learned very quickly that people are going to have a mixed reaction to that. And then when everything got highly politicized, because I was never political at all, I really didn't understand much about politics. But when it kind of came for me in 2020 and people had stabbed me in the back and they were pissed off that I was on one side because I was just on shows people happened to be on, I learned a lot then, because it really showed me the true colors of people and who you could trust and who you couldn't. I already knew of an ugly side in show business. I had seen it for years, but this was even in just doing anything where I had this naivety that I thought people would root for me at some point in my life, mainly because of what I had been through and my addictions and the people, I mean the people close to me, not people that didn't know me. But it turned out that the people close to me were not all of them. Some of them are still my best friends, but a lot of them were my biggest enemies. And that's something that I had to learn the bigger I got and the more that I did. And that's, depression, all that stuff. It's all comes as a part of it. And eventually you just you have to get out of that headspace and try to just be yourself, which I still fight with. But you have to, because there is just a side to the show business in this industry that if you don't just sell you're never going to be able to sell who you really are. And that's almost impossible. Like, there's no reason to do it if you're trying to be somebody else. You have to be authentic to your own voice. It's why I've never understood why people would steal jokes, because you're not being you. You're just taking an easy way to steal a laugh and then get stage time. It's pointless. The whole idea is the journey. It's not even about the destination. There's no destination in comedy. There's no you're going to be the greatest. That's not a thing. It won't exist. People will argue between Carlin and Pryor and Eddie Murphy and everybody else. There will never be like this idea of the greatest to ever live. You can shoot for that, but it won't ever be. I mean, across the board, probably Cosby is the one who everybody liked the most, before, of course, before his later work.
Which side hustle.
Yes. Which big fan. But of his comedy. But yeah, he's somebody who you have to look at that level of sociopath to realize how good he got to be able to manipulate everyone into thinking he's the best.
Yeah. It's the kind of like we I've worked with these kind of people and known these kind of people too. Like it's like, was he lying to himself so convincingly that that's how he skated by all those years? Like, was he not even truthful with himself of who he was? And is that how he was able to sell that version of himself so effectively?
I think so. You'd have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you can be that maniacal, and maybe I'm wrong, but I do know there's plenty of evil in the world. But the idea of having your own sitcom where you're a gynecologist in the basement of your house, to be that broad stroked about it, you have to be burying it. Like, there has to be some part where you're compartmentalizing every thought you have into different sections of your brain, because just the strategy of how much he gaslit everybody is next level.
Yeah.
So it has to be an accident. I mean, it has to be. And if it's not, then he's worse than anyone besides a couple,
Well, now that we covered that, we're gonna jump to breaking news from 30 years ago.
Excellent. Go.
We're gonna go with that next. But yeah. So now how do you talk about authentically being yourself? Like, how do you balance? I mean, who were your idols growing up? I mean, how do you balance this idea of finding your voice? But obviously, I mean, every artist starts from some kind of level of inspiration. But how do you tell other comics to navigate that space of how do you take the best of what has driven you to even be passionate about comedy to begin with, people who you grew up listening to and loving and wanting to be like, and maybe even some of your style is drawn from that. But how do you articulate to young comics the navigation of developing your own voice and being comfortable with your own voice and being confident in your perspective and your delivery and in the way that you approach the stage?
Well, when I was young, I liked, my dad had introduced me to Dangerfield and Bob Newhart and Carlin and Eddie Murphy and Sam Kinison. And I was young watching this stuff, but I wasn't even as much into stand-up as I was when he would wake me up when I was a kid to watch Saturday Night Live with him. I was a huge fan. And this is like the Rob Schneider, Chris Farley, Adam Sandler era. But I do have a lot of comics that will approach me. So like all of that has affected how I look at how I am on stage, all of it. Every one of them has had some kind of an effect on the way that I do comedy. Norm Macdonald, any of them. So the way that I look at it is like, yeah, you're kind of trained by watching how they do it, but then you have to figure out who you are and be honest with yourself. And I have a lot of comics that will come up to me and say, hey, I want to tell like this joke, but I'm really nervous about it. And I'm like, well, does that joke make you happy? Like, do you enjoy that content? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, then do it. Yeah. Like, what are you going to do? Bomb at an open mic? I'm like, all you have to do is figure out how to tell it. I'm like, be true to your voice. And the more you practice the exercise of being true to your voice, the better you're going to get at that, as opposed to emulating. And emulating, you're going to do. Every comic who starts is going to kind of sound like somebody else because you're just following the rhythm of something you understand.
Yep.
So, there were a lot of Hedbergs when I started, a lot of Attels, a lot of Dane Cooks, a lot of, who was popular at the time, and Attell still is because he's brilliant. But you will kind of emulate that, but then eventually you have to figure out where's your own voice inside of that, and I always tell people to just be honest with that journey with yourself and be honest with who you want to be.
Talk about SNL and the sketch writing process. I mean, you're a brilliant sketch writer. I've seen your work.
Thank you.
Got to participate in one brilliant sketch.
You did, yes.
One time. And I know for me that was sketch work has always been something I've absolutely loved. It was my favorite part of Our Days of Past, and what originally kind of I felt like I signed up to be a part of is that comedy world and the sketches and the things of that nature. Obviously, when you came in, you brought a whole new level of sketch writing to that show, and I'm just curious, like, what is your process like when you're approaching sketches? Like how now a lot of what you've done has been like daily topical news stuff, which I feel like there's kind of the prompt, right? There's the this is in the news. What's the angle on these things? But talk about your approach to sketch writing, because I think it's something that a lot of people want to do. They want to do it for social media. They want to do it for other gigs and stuff. But like a lot of people, I think, don't really know how to take their perspective and their stage, what they've worked on stage, and their comedy chops and articulate it into script form for sketch work. What's your approach to writing sketches?
Usually I just kind of think of the topic. If we have to do it specifically to a topic, I'll kind of like look at that person, like if it was for a Tim Walz thing or if it was for something that you want, it depends on the thing. But the thing that I really like more than anything is stuff that it's not as broad. So one of my favorite sketches we ever did, it was called Fallen Oates, and it was about Hall and Oates, and Hall gets a restraining order against Oates, and Oates keeps following him around, and it's done as a movie trailer, and it's one of my favorite things we've done. And I liked writing that because we were able to incorporate every line of dialogue was something out of their songs, and that way, and it still flowed like a conversation.
Yeah.
But then it still came off like a Michael Bay or like an over the top. I shouldn't say Michael Bay. That's terrible. But like a Michael Mann kind of intense thriller. I like to just kind of find silly stuff and bring that out more than anything. And there's sketch like right now, they're not necessarily hitting, but I enjoy them. And it's gambling commercials, but every one of them is bet friends, and every one of them is people killing themselves. So the first one,
back to the signature dark humor that I love so much.
Yeah, the first one is just like Garrett's in a Lions jersey and he realizes they just lost, so he just puts a gun in his mouth, and it just says like bet friends. If you go here right now, it says side effects of the gambling apps, just like they do. And then at the very end, you just hear a gunshot. And then the second one is just it's Angela and my friend Derek who are on my show, and Derek is running a generator in his house, just trying to off himself, sitting on the couch. And his wife comes in and is like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I just lost everything that we had, betting that the Dolphins would beat just the Dolphins beating anybody." But and Angela goes, "It's fine. I actually just, don't worry. I have a nest egg put away. I just made some money betting on Petey at the Special Olympics." And he looks and she looks, and then it turns out that the completely sure thing didn't work out. So then she sits down next to him, restarts the generator, and then it goes through side effects. And then the end of it is just them dead in a smoke-filled room. And it says like, "You can invite a friend for $10, get $10 in free gameplay." And it looks just like an actual betting commercial, but the reason why I'm doing it partially, and if you have any gambling sponsors, you might want to take it out, but partially is because
we don't have any sponsors. You can blast them all right now.
Good. Okay.
This is the safe part of the podcast to do that.
Oh, good. Gambling, I think, is destroying the world and destroying families and hurting people. And I know suicides from it. I know they're up 22%. And I know that's very morbid to say. But the way that I can bring attention to that is to actually just have these gambling commercials on our show that randomly pop up. Like, this is a message from our sponsor, and it's Bet Friends, and it's just somebody's always about to off themselves or kill their family. And it's dark, but it's funny, and it also brings kind of an awareness to this addiction that I think is hurting America. So I kind of want to look at the motive behind what I'm doing. Do I just want to make you laugh? Do I want to actually say something? And the stuff that I want to say, I always find is best presented in a dark light, especially if it's that blunt. Because if I'm going to talk about suicide, why not talk about two people dead on a couch in the second one and saying you can invite a friend? So that's a fun challenge for me, is to put those out. And I knew they wouldn't necessarily do well in the algorithm as standalones, but they do very well on the show. Yeah. It's every word that you can't say. But it's like, and it's like a lot of them are the real side effects of, it's like may cause, what was it? Like I looked up a couple where it was like may cause gambling compulsion. It's like, no kidding. So then I just add stuff to it where I'm like male breasts, whatever it is that I want to add to the side effects, which are always fun because you can just write straight up clowning, anal leakage, whatever it might might be, and then you just mix it in with the real ones, and the real ones you realize are just as comical in many ways as the ones you can make up.
Yeah. So
Because
you're taking reality and starting with reality for some of these things, and then just cranking it up to 12. And
yes,
it's shocking how much unreasonable behavior and observations comes from when you just start with reality of some of these things. And I notice a lot of your sketches kind of follow the same theme, where you take what's really happening, and it's not that far off from what's really going on in the sketch. Like, sketch and reality are riding parallel with each other, and so many of the times you're just taking one and revealing the truth of what's really going on underneath the surface.
yeah, and that's what I want to do. Is it, even if it shocks you a little bit, like I have my wife watch that and was kind of like, just kind of taken back. But she understood why I did it. And then other people watch it and find it hilarious. But yeah, there is something there where I think you have to call out whatever's going on. And sometimes you have to do that directly. And I think to me, that's still comical. That's not being over the top. I think going so over the top with it is what's funny, because why roundabout say it's causing this level of problem? Just show the actual happy ads they use with the theme music and bed friends, invite a friend, bed friend, and I think it's a really fun way to call out anything, and you can do anything with sketch. And even something we did about just explaining things that make no sense to people. If they want to like learn something about whatever's going on inside of the political system, I won't usually write it, but I'll write it with someone because they'll understand it better. And then we'll explain it to the audience like a child in the most ridiculous way possible. And those tend to do very well because it's just us breaking down like USAID, AID, and all that stuff. That does very well. So I don't know. The part that I loved about what I did before and what I wanted to do now was sketch. And everything that we've done, I feel like a lot of it is really the right way to go and really correct. And it's stuff from even the Splurge, which is where they just have Pride Month be an entire month, but you're forced to take part in it.
Yeah,
And
that's sketch. Yeah.
So it's like it's little stuff like that, but it's not too far off from the future. And even the pilot I wrote a couple of years ago for Normal World, a lot of that stuff has just kind of become real. So it's sort of predicting the future too of where things could go, and then watching it tragically happen. Because if we don't change, or at least each person kind of looks inward at themselves, we're just headed in a very bad direction. And the only way that I can think of bringing it out is to point out kind of the atrocities through comedy.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit more, because that's something I've always loved about comedy. And again, going back to my origins in this world as well, that I always felt was so powerful about it is like the sort of comedy, to speak truth, has generationally always been incredibly powerful. I mean, you go back to, of course, the prior days and things that were called out. You go to, Chappelle is doing this. There's something about comedy that gets to people quicker and helps them understand, even if you don't agree with that person's point of view. I don't agree with 100% of anybody out there, really. But, like, even if you don't, but you understand what they're trying to argue, and you understand where they're trying to persuade people in some ways so much clearer than a talking head on a screen explaining the same exact concept to you. Comedy has a way of doing it that is just different and powerful and just more effective than a straight up dialogue can be sometimes. Have you found that, like, in, obviously your show and things you've worked with before, like, do you find that a good joke will get people farther down the line of where you're trying to take them faster than even the most scripted talking points?
Yes, I do. I think it's because it requires you to think, and it requires you to kind of look at something in a different way. When you have a talking head just telling you something, it's a different response. It's very much like you're being taught something, or you're being forced to learn, or you're being, they want you to take that side. Where with a comic, you can kind of listen to them explain themselves, and you go, okay, well, maybe I don't agree with that, but I kind of see this point of view now more than I did. or I think there's something there
Yeah.
that can reach out to people in a way where they actually check themselves as opposed to just
Yeah.
adamantly disagreeing with whatever they saw. And I think that's because it's under that light of a comic's not saying I'm better than you or vote like this, or the ones that do whatever, but the there's that element of, I think it just allows you to kind of look in a mirror. And when you're watching a comic, if you're watching any art, whether it's a movie or TV, whatever allows you to relate to that person, even if you don't agree, allows you to hear a different side of it. And that's why I think humor is so important. And I think the idea of us losing it in this country, or, the freedom of speech thing that people go on about, there's a reason for it. Because if comedy doesn't exist, there's really no way that people can actually look at themselves. Like, if you can't laugh at yourself or laugh at any sort of situation that's dark, I think you're going to have a miserable life.
Yeah, and I think something that's beautiful about comedy that is different than talking head presentation is the moment somebody says something that even is shocking, it's edgy, whatever it is, but the moment it does make you laugh, it's like you're forced to kind of surrender your cards a little bit, saying, "Hey, I understand this person to some extent," because I had this involuntary reaction of laughter, which almost tells me that I must have resonated deeper somewhere beyond the brain. I must have resonated with what this person saying, or understood it to be true more than I might allow myself to in a pure, even if a talking head, you're kind of in this like one-sided debate with the talking head sometimes of you're challenging everything they're saying with another point. And that's where I feel like, I'm not going to, you don't have to go into late night TV much, but like, I feel like the ones that in the moments of these hosts that have gotten into more preachy moments that forego, you don't even really necessarily try to get the laugh. It's hard to get the audience on your side, because I feel like if you made me laugh at whatever you're saying, you naturally draw me into being persuaded of your side more so than if I'm just analytically processing what it is you're trying to say.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think, a lot with like the Kimmel thing, there was a way that he could have structured that to where you could have laughed, and
Yeah.
regardless of the topic. And then there was a way to go into Trump saying, yeah, I think it's really sad. I'm putting a new, restaurant on the White House, or a new dining room. And there's a way to make that funny.
Yeah.
The problem is I think there's two elements to it. One is you have to choose your words way too carefully now, because people are going to look for intent, and they're going to assume your intent, regardless of what you mean by it. And that's the thing that sucks. And I'm not defending what he did, but I didn't think he should be thrown off late night regardless.
I didn't think so either.
Yeah, and I said that on my show. I'm like, that's absurd. And I don't want to just see the right go at the left the same way. And I know a lot of people disagree with that. They're like, well, we got canceled, they should be canceled. I'm like, no, it's not how that should go.
No, that's not the principled approach for sure. I think it's a dangerous place when we start holding comedians accountable the way that you would hold a news reporter or journalist accountable to factual presentation of any event.
Especially when you have every single news channel so sided and all propaganda and all, you can't really just blame somebody for kind of speaking in a way. And a lot of people don't like Kimmel because they're my age, they're late Gen X, early millennial, and that's who loved him. And he's kind of turned his back on that entire brand. I mean, not even just turned his back on it, but really shunned it. And as a fan, that hurts. You grew up supporting this guy, and now he comes off as he hates you. And I think that's the difference between, say, Conan, Craig Ferguson, Carson, like some of the best people to ever do it. And a lot of the people getting thrown off TV right now, or getting looked at like that, is they're not coming in so heavily sided that it alienates half the people.
Yeah, and I feel like I've counseled and advised, I don't say counseled, I've advised many comics over the years of people who felt like they wanted to go political and to go, and it comes from the place of wanting to be authentic. They feel like, hey, maybe I find my audience on this side of the aisle, and on both sides of the aisle. And I think one warning I've always had to people is, A, be careful of who you think will embrace you when you go there. Yeah. But have you seen, and I feel like you do this really well as I've kind of watched your journey through comedy, but there's a lot of people, once they go political, like it's becomes this vortex that sucks you into, you just drift year after year away from comedy, and you get more preachy, and you instead of chasing laughter, you're chasing clapter. And you see this on not just on the network televisions, but you see this in a lot of podcasting where people say, well, there's a big conservative or liberal audience here, let me shift my material more and more into that thing. And the danger is, I feel like you end up slowly drifting into, especially when trying to be topical, if you have any kind of podcast, it just becomes the news but angry rather than comedy. Do you see that? And how do you help people? Because I feel like, I know you work really hard on this, you have political leanings, you have political thoughts and feelings, but how do you keep comedy front and center of that and not drift into just rage baiting news topics to peddling it to welcoming audiences for that kind of content?
I think it's okay to have an opinion on current climate. The problem is now is everything's become political, very political. Even if your joke is not political, there's a chance people are going to find some sort of politics in it or think you side one way or another. And that's what sucks is, yes, I do shows that are more right leaning. I do Gutfeld. My own show is on Blaze. But you keep hearing this like welcome the conversation, and I always have. And when I was on other shows, I took extremely liberal stances, but I hate that even like answering this question, I feel this need to preface it by explaining myself before I can just say that, you always feel like you have to do damage control, and that sucks as a comedian because it's the last thing you should do. And I think that's what we're living in now is really, I think so many people are in a different way, like threatened, attacked, policed, there's so much coming at them all the time that even somebody like Kimmel, the idea that ABC threw them off is ridiculous to me. You threw off Roseanne, you threw off Tim Allen for his political beliefs. You helped push the COVID vaccine, regardless of if people wanted it. They were responsible for all of that. I think the same goes with Colbert, whether people like him or not. He signed a contract for 10 years. If they want to have Pfizer on there and dancing Pfizer needles, they're going to make Colbert do it. Even though when he got the show, he was very much like semi-right leaning Catholic, went to church. He said he was able to play the Bill O'Reilly character because he could relate to some of, the ideology. Mm-hmm. So now you have people that I think are forced almost at gunpoint by their contracts and by people. And you can't just say, walk away. You can't lose everything in your contract. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of what happened to Kimmel. People blame his wife, which I'm sure might be it. But I mean, people blame a lot of things, and they talk about how it's his own show, but realistically, I think that it's become so forced on you that I don't know if Kimmel even had a choice. I don't know if Kimmel actually had writers put that out and he was just, who knows? Like, I think people are genuinely feel like there's under so much pressure all the time to please everybody. And that goes against everything that a comic should be. And I have to shake out that mentality too.
Yeah, it's an easy trap to fall into because I feel like your audience, as things have become more politically divided, the room to make both sides of the aisle laugh has gotten really narrow, where you feel like that joke isn't even hardly there anymore. But I think it is. I think there are comics out there who navigate that space really well, that keep people guessing on to where they land on each maybe political issue, even if they have political material out there. But they find a way that's in it. It feels few and far between now people who venture into that political realm of comedy and can keep comedy at the center of it and to chase the joke first, regardless of where it's at. And I feel like as an audience member, I think when I see somebody who does it well, it resonates with me, even if I don't agree with the premise. Because if it's based in truth, especially, and I think that's a big part of it too. Where is the truth of the joke? If the joke is based on some element of truth, talk about the gambling ads, when you see something that to be true, and even if I don't like, even it's an inconvenient premise that I'm like, man, I wish that wasn't the case, but that's pretty funny because you got me. Like you lampooned my side of the belief on this thing. The audience response. That's what I wish more of them were doing, was like finding the truth in the joke, keeping the joke front and center, and allowing the cards to fall where they do, regardless of who they're appealing to in that particular bit.
It's true. And you have so many people now that want to correct you. Like, I have a joke. It did really well online. It does well. I'm like, for earlier this year, They were carving swastikas into cars or into Teslas. I'm like, why would you do that? It's electric. Nazis used gas. Get your history right, you know?
Yeah.
And then I'll say, like, at least put the swastika correct. Stop disrespecting my flag. So people have to like get it and understand. But then you have people that are like, well, actually, like they'll jump into a conversation, and you need morons to kind of build up a video to be viral. But they'll say, you know, it wasn't that kind of gas. Yeah, I know. It's not. I'm aware that auto gasoline. God, it's so difficult with a lot of it, where you just have to realize that there's a good majority of people that are going to get what you do, and not everybody that doesn't like what I do is dumb. They're not. Some people just don't have that taste, but some people are absolute morons, and a lot of times that's who you're communicating to. And then with your own voice, if someone else wants to politicize it, Michael Malice said it best. He's like, "Why do you want to pander to people that just want to misinterpret what you say?" There's nothing that can be done about that. They just want to change it into whatever they feel it is. So,
and that goes both ways too. That goes both ways on take the Kimmel issue as just one example of that.
Dude, they did the exact, regardless of what anybody thinks, I feel that the exact same thing was being done. And they'll argue it by doing parrot talk and saying, no, this wasn't freedom of speech. This was a direct. No, it was. Yeah. Regardless of if he got it wrong, regardless of if he knew, he's allowed to say it. I mean, look, sponsors are allowed to leave. Broadcasting companies are also allowed not to syndicate him. I understand what you're saying, but do I think he should be pulled? No. It doesn't matter if he doesn't agree with me, but I don't think people want that. People want their dumb ideas always championed and always telling them that they're right. And I think that we don't have a lot of free thinkers in this country anymore as a result. I mean, we do. I shouldn't say that, but a lot of the people that will go online and see what you do don't have the wherewithal to just think a little bit deeper. Even think. Everything is a surface reaction. People don't use their head anymore because they stare at a phone that just gives them content. So they don't actually put any brain power into going, what does this mean? Knee-jerk reaction is the dumbest thing you can do, and it's basically the currency of the day.
Yeah, and I think it's come from this environment as well, where people are looking at, you know, we've created this culture where actors and comedians are thoughts and opinions about things, and I would separate comics to the sense that I think there's always been this historical role of comedians to be truth tellers in society. So I think it's appropriate to look to them to some extent as people who are telling it how it is. That's kind of how comedy has always been supposed to be protected anyways. But we've elevated so many celebrity figures into and maybe it's because the other side of entertainment, the news talking heads have become so divided and politicized on either side of the aisle that we're looking for other means of information, other means of commentary on social issues and things that are going on, that we see a comedian's perspective on something, and we're elevating it to a point where that maybe that artist never intended it to be elevated and taken as seriously as their people are taking it. They're taking it as commentary, then as the two have become more and more blurred, maybe over time, specifically by people who have, you know, large podcasts, for instance, comics who have large podcasts or syndicated network shows. That I think back to that comedy IQ idea that people have a hard time differentiating what is the commentary, what is jokes, what is just all kind of melded together now. People have a hard time differentiating and even appreciating what is funny about something that someone didn't mean to be taken as truthful commentary. It's just a joke, versus people who really are trying to push an agenda, push certain sentiments onto their audience for them to adopt as their own.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said that better. I think that's what they are trying to do. And I think a lot of people who got into it in that sense, where you have Bill Maher, where he's gotten more political, but he's always been politically incorrect. I mean, he got thrown off of TV by the conservative right for basically saying that it was something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, but they were saying like, the people that hijack the planes, you know, these are cowards. And he's like, no, they're not. That's the problem. He's like, they're terrorists. They're willing to do anything to die for their holy book, and it's a problem. So he was pulled off because that was somehow sympathizing with terrorists. Now here we are, 24 years later, and you have him being called a conservative because he's willing to talk to Kid Rock. and Charlie
Yeah.
Kirk,
Yeah.
even though he's still talking to a bunch of which is exactly what his platform always was. He always
Yeah.
had right-leaning people on it. So that was always authentic. But now there's this idea of a conversation that we're going to fix something, and it's bullshit. Sorry, pardon my language, and just clean it.
You're good.
But it's just not true.
Yeah.
It's not something anybody's going to do, because the reality is nobody really wants to have the conversation. There's a few people that might, but they really just want to push whatever they have for the money. And I mean, you're not going to go against gigantic platforms, even if you're against them, because you need to work. And I think we're all kind of left in this point that feels a little inauthentic. And that's why taking a comic's word fully on what they think politically, it makes no sense, because anybody should be layered. You should have different views. You shouldn't just jump into one side and go, I believe everything they say. I've never done that.
Mm-mm.
It's like when he talked about Agent Orange and my dad. I know that the government killed my dad and took no responsibility. That's where I stand as a voter, is both your sides have done nothing, so you don't get to have my vote just because.
Yeah.
You've never done the thing that I've wanted you to correct, which is to help the military and the people who need the VA. You've never corrected that.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, half the senators, they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars on both sides of the aisle, because the whole thing is nothing more than an insider trading Ponzi scheme that we kind of get. So the idea of championing a politician or politics is pointless. No one can do that.
Yeah.
There's no original thought there. That's the problem, is the loudest voices have no original thought. And the problem with comics going down that road is it becomes paint by numbers and it escapes your real voice. And that sucks.
Yeah, it's not good for comedy. It's not good for the trajectory of where it's going, which is funny, because I feel like it's gone down that route for a long time now. But at the same time, I feel like we're kind of in maybe I'm just naively hopeful that we're in a little bit of comedy resurgence too, where people are able to do comedy the way it's supposed to be done again, in the way that it was always intended. And I feel like you have pockets of that happening where, the people are chasing the right things, chasing the jokes, chasing, what makes their audience tick and laugh, and not having to do it in a way that is sacrificial to their authenticity, their voice. That's really, I think, at the end of the day, what people really just want is they want authentic people to cheer for. They want authentic comics to cheer for. That's why I think it's so hard sometimes in the other parts of Hollywood, where there's more of a mask on it when you're an actor, when you're even a musician, because there's more of you're not really supposed to be the most authentic person online. But comics are kind of always putting everything out there, and you kind of, and you're supposed to kind of feel that with the comedians you're resonating with, especially with the way social media is being used for comedians and their voices. Like they want that authentic take on things, and a lot of them are scared to put it out there at all. And it happens a lot. We talked to a lot of comedians who feel strongly about a lot of different subjects, and they don't want to put it out there because, like, this is going to be taken the wrong way. People aren't used to seeing me in that light. I'm just going to keep, the smart ones kind of keep it to themselves at this point, in my opinion. Like, a lot of them kind of ride that line really well of keeping it pretty underground.
Yeah.
But, I think I'm hopeful that we're heading back into a better direction in the future, where comedy at least comes out of this thing alive on the other side of this.
No, and I'm with you. And I think the problem people have with actors is when you have somebody like Mark Ruffalo who walks down the street claiming that he knows all this stuff, and it's really just nonsense information, and talking about his struggles in American, when it's like, dude, you have Marvel money. Like, you're the embodiment of the American dream. Meanwhile, you have Robert Downey Jr. sitting on Rogan having a conversation with him, a guy who was a heroin addict and broken in every way possible, who finally got sober, which he credits to Mel Gibson. That's authentic.
Yeah.
Walking down the street and saying that that everything's an atrocity when it's worked out for you splendidly is very inauthentic, and that's what I think creates hate. And I've wanted to always be authentic with my audience. That's why it sucks when you have to go against somebody or deal, because it's really going against the status quo is something a comic should do. Even if it's just you doing an act about your life, you just have to put something out there that's vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a vulnerability in your comedy, I don't think you're really doing comedy. I mean, I think there's an exception. I mean, if you look at somebody like Jeselnik, who's not very vulnerable and everything's dark and hits a certain way, and it's kind of always.
I love Jeselnik. I love a lot of his stuff.
He's fantastic, and I mean, but that's his that works perfectly for him, for his style. You know, I think with a lot of these people who are trying to say like, I'm in this for you guys. It's like, you're not.
And I don't need another champion of my political beliefs. Just be funny.
Yeah. I just need jokes.
I think that's what Justin like does so well. I feel like, I don't know him personally, but I don't know what audience he feels like if he ever feels like he's trying to preach anybody. But I've always found like his humor to be one that threads the needle pretty well. Of like, I feel like you went where the joke was, and regardless of where it ended up, and you weren't chasing the algorithm. You know, again, air quote algorithm of life. But it's hard to do.
And I think there's a benefit to like when you broke. I think for when he got bigger, it was more about going for the joke. And I think now I mean, there's no doubt that comics help shape modern politics to a degree. There's no doubt that voting and everything has been affected a little bit by it. And that's both sides, you know, and that's not necessarily a bad thing if you want to agree with somebody who's being honest on their show, but it is bad when everybody who wants to be like that show or deliberately go against those shows because it's something else, that becomes inauthentic.
Yeah.
Or if you listen to the both sides argument that's so well thought out that they then put out as if it's like their natural thought. And it's like, you're just trying to maintain all this audience. And I think it's cowardly and it's become something to hide behind. And I loathe it more and more because I think it's just more important to go for the joke than to necessarily, and going for the laugh and pandering is just the worst, man.
Yeah, and I feel like most people can feel it. I think, especially when it just doesn't land the way I think, you know, a comic might intend for it to land. You can kind of sense where if this person was going that, you know, what was the target in their mind? You know, was it the point? Was it the joke? Was it the laugh? Where were they trying to get with it? Tell me about Dave's world right now. What's next? What's next coming up down the pike for you? What's coming your way? Where's your comedy heading next?
Nothing.
No,
I'm looking to do another special a little bit different this time. You know, I have had a few false starts with those through my entire career, but I'd like to put that out. But right now I'm recording my audiobook. People can check it out. Party of One, a fuzzy memoir. I actually just started writing another book. I started working on a screenplay. But just continuing to just put out content. I'm on my show Normal World, which we put out a lot. You've been on it. And really just, you know, take it one day at a time, like sobriety, and just see what works. Cause I don't think there's much of a plan. It's just, let's just write material, go from day to day and hope something lands. And, you know, I had certain goals I set out for myself and I achieved them this year. And now I don't have that many goals.
Well, that's a good place to be. If you just knock them all out, you just, you know, you're in rest time. You can clock out.
I can't, but I wish I could, but I can't. I mean, I don't want the crowd to think that I don't want to be there.
Yeah,
I do. I want to be there. I like performing, but yeah, it definitely gets exhausting, and it's fine. Every job is exhausting, and until I retire or drop dead of a heart attack in a hotel randomly somewhere, who knows? This is this is all I got.
Well, don't die in a hotel. I feel like it's overdone at this point. It's overplayed. Yeah, it's not as romantic as the movies make it seem.
And everybody thinks you did it to yourself while watching something dirty.
It's true. The conspiracy theories will go wild, and it's just not healthy for the dialogue. Really,
no.
we want to remember the best of Dave.
You do, you don't want to think. Yeah, you don't want to like Chris Cornell where they're like, did he or did he?
Yeah, what happened to that Red Roof Inn? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, friend, so thank you for stopping by. Thanks for talking. We'll catch up more soon. And everyone go follow Dave. Go see him on tour. He is hilarious. What's your website, Dave? Is it just Dave Landau?
Just DaveLandau.com.
DaveLandau.com.
I got on the ground floor of that one.
Yeah.
DaveLandau. A lot of people can't spell that, which is fine. It's not even technically my last name. I found out years later. So,
well, that's another story for another time. I can't wait to get
it.
It
is,
one.
Yeah. So, yeah. It turns out I'm Irish and Italian, and that's something.
I don't know if it's something, but it's not nothing.
No, I like it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much.
I live with it. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps us out when you do. Share the clips on social media with your friends and let us know below. Who do you want to hear from next? Enough views on these things, enough subscribers, enough followers. We can go get whoever we want. You let us know.